Hi everyone, welcome back to Our Great Recipes. Today we're making steak and crushed tomatoes. So let's begin with our ingredients. First we have our steak. Now this is just a round steak, so it's a relatively inexpensive cut of meat. I would never do this recipe with a loin or rib steak, but this will show you how to take a fairly inexpensive cut of meat and make it tasty and tender relatively quickly. Now these first three ingredients have the chemical components to break down the enzymes in the meat, and this will make it tender. So we'll begin with soy sauce, white wine, homemade stewed tomatoes. These are the three most important ones that contain the acid base. Next we have butter, salt, pepper, parsley, rosemary, olive oil, onions, and garlic. The first step, I have my meat at room temperature and I allowed it to sit out for about half an hour. Now I'm going to give the meat a drizzle of olive oil and brush it on in an even application. Next I'm going to season with salt, pepper, and beef's best friend, rosemary. And I'm going to do this for both sides. Now I've got a nice hot pan and I'm going to add a bit of olive oil. And I'm going to place the steaks in and pan sear them for about 3 or 4 minutes on each side. After about 3 minutes I'm going to flip these. Now I should add, only flip the meat once. So leave it a full 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then just give it a flip. Don't flip it back and forth, back and forth. After about 6 minutes into our searing, I'm going to add a nice knob of butter. And I'm just going to let that melt. After it melts, I'm just going to roll it around the pan and spoon up a bit and spoon it over the top of the steak. I'm going to allow this to cook for another minute, total of 7.5 minutes, maybe 8. I like my meat relatively tender, or I should say rare, so I'm about 7-8 minutes. You might want to go 9 or 10 if you want it well done. Now I'm going to turn off the heat, and I'm going to pull these steaks out and set them on a plate and let them rest for about, I'd say about 15 minutes. And don't touch that pan, don't wipe it, just turn off the heat and leave it, because we're going to use, you got some nice juices in there, we're going to use it again later. After my meat is rested for about 15 minutes, I got some nice juices happening here, and that's what I want. Now we're going to fire the pan back up to a medium heat, and we just let it warm up for a minute, and I'm going to add in my garlic and my onions. I'm just going to saute these until they're fragrant and the onions become fairly translucent. Now that my onions are fragrant and nice and translucent, you see how the nice juices have coated them that were left in the bottom of the pan. We're just going to put them to one side. And I'm going to add the meat back in, along with the juices on the plate. Now I'm going to add my crushed tomatoes, soy sauce, white wine, and I'm going to reduce my heat to medium-low, and I'm just going to let this simmer for about 15-20 minutes. About 10 or 12 minutes into my simmer, I'm just going to give the steaks a flip over and a little stir, and I'm just going to put some of the tomatoes and the juices over top of the steak. And we'll just simmer these for another 10 minutes. And after simmering for about 20 minutes, we're ready to plate and serve. Now to plate this, I'm going to place a bed of the crushed tomatoes and onions on the bottom of the plate. Place the steak over it, followed by a drizzle of the juices over the top. And here's our steak and crushed tomatoes. Relatively simple, inexpensive, but delicious. You're going to love this. For more information on this recipe and more cooking tips, visit our website at ourgreatrecipes.com. And as always, have a wonderful day and bon appetit.